Good evening and welcome to the project launch of Impact Justice, which is really the short name for Improve Access to Justice in the Caribbean. It marks a significant partnership between the Caribbean and Canada, a relationship that has borne good fruit over several decades. We're pleased this evening to welcome you as our special guest. And I'd like first to welcome the Honorable Sir Marston Gibson, the Chief Justice of Barbados, as well as His Excellency Mr. Richard Handley, the High Commissioner of Canada to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, members of the Diplomatic Corps who are serving in Barbados, Professor Udine Barito, the Pro-Vice-Chancellor and Principal of the Open Campus and Principal Designate of the Cave Campus, whose status will change as of midnight tonight, Professor Velma Newton, Regional Project Director for the Impact Justice Project, Mr. Anthony Ross, the guest speaker, who is a Queen's Counsel, who comes from my neighboring country of St. Kitts and Nevis, but has been all over the world. We'll talk more about that later on. Professor Alan Cobley, the Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Undergraduate Studies here at UWI, the Campus Bursar, Ms. Lisa Aline, Mrs. Gail Francis Vaughan, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of the Attorney General, Mrs. Barbara Cook Johnson, the Registrar of the Supreme Court of Barbados, Dr. David Berry, the Dean of the Faculty of Law, and other members of that faculty, members of the Canadian High Commission for Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean who are with us this evening, members of the campus community, members of the media who are covering this for the rest of the world to see, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Julian Rogers, and I'm your host for the evening. I must tender apologies now on behalf of the Prime Minister, the Honourable Frendel Stewart, who could not be with us this evening, and to the on behalf of the Attorney General, Adriel Braffett, of course, who is travelling as well. And we have regrets tended by the representative of the UN delegate to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, and the Office of the OS representative as well. I just want to say very quickly that a project such as this touches many lives. And the intention, of course, once you understand the mission or the objective for that matter, you realize that it really is intended to ensure that everybody gets justice. Very often we hear that justice is not delivered to many people in our Caribbean countries for one reason or another. And so after a study, the effort here is to ensure that there's access to justice befitting men and women, youth and businesses in the CARICOM region. And in keeping with the objectives of the Government of Canada for the region, it seeks to strengthen the regulatory framework for the CSME, the Caribbean Single Market and Economy, the OECS Economic Union, to achieve poverty reduction, sustainable development, and address drivers of conflict in the Caribbean region, such as marginalization of young people, second-class treatment of women, insufficient knowledge and access to alternative dispute mechanisms, such as arbitration and mediation, which has certainly assessed people in settling a lot of the disputes. And in fact, there's even a component that deals with gang leaders. So you can understand how deep this reaches. So the experts are here this evening to share with you a lot more of this mission and a lot more of the objectives. And I would like to start first by giving an opportunity to a man who packed his bags yesterday and flew off to Jamaica to take up another campus duty. And now he moves from the responsibility of Caveville to the responsibility of all the campuses. And I'm sure he regrets leaving Caveville after such a tenure working with all the people here in Barbados. But of course, his new position allows him to work now with everybody, whether they're in St. Augustine or Mona or Caveville or an open campus facility everywhere around the Caribbean. And now he talks about opening a city campus in downtown Broad Street. I don't know where this university is going to go. Next stop, the International Space Station as a campus outlet or something like that. So the vision is broad, it's big, and it's possible, clearly. So before Professor Sir Hilary Beckles left, we got him in front of a camera and said, "You can extend a welcome to the community this evening." He said yes, we recorded it, and we're happy to share it with you this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles.
Very good evening, everyone. His Excellency Richard Hanley, Principal Ross, my distinguished colleagues, Professor Newton and Dean Berry, friends, welcome to everyone. This evening we are formally launching the Improve Access to Justice in the Caribbean project. I regret very much that I cannot be with you this evening, at least in person, but be assured that I'm with you all the way in spirit. This project means so very much to this university, to this campus, and to myself. I have been privileged to work with Ambassador Henley, with my colleagues, Professor Newton and Dean Berry, to see this project through to fruition. Its launch, therefore, at the Cave Hill campus this evening is therefore historic. It is seminal. Critically, it speaks to the long and enduring partnership between this region, our governments, our university, and the governments and peoples of Canada. I know that His Excellency Hanley has spoken magnificently about the importance of this project. And I'm so happy that this evening all of us are gathered here to celebrate its launch. The objectives are very much within the development paradigms of Caribbean societies. Coming out of the colonial period, moving deeper and deeper into the era of nationalism and nationhood, we have remained concerned about some aspects of democratic access to justice, to make sure that the institutions of justice and the instruments that govern those relationships are modern, are up to date, and efficient. This project focuses upon the creation within the Caribbean context of a very sophisticated and modern access to justice project network and arrangements. To that extent, therefore, all of us who will benefit from the training, from the shifting of our paradigms about access to justice, about the relationship between justice and democracy, about the relationships between justice and citizenship. This project is residing at the intersection of all of these conversations. In effect, therefore, this project is a critical element within the notion of nation building in the Caribbean. I would wish to thank the government and people of Canada for having confidence in our university and our faculty of law and being able to be the agent to execute this project on behalf of Caribbean peoples. To my colleague, Professor Newton, and the Caribbean Law Institute Center, we thank her. We thank her for her enduring determination to make sure that this project was not only perfectly conceived, but effectively implemented. I'm aware the work has already started. I'm aware that we are already deep into this project. For the remainder of this duration, I wish to say to my colleagues, keep going, do what you are best at doing, which is executing projects with efficiency and maximum satisfaction. I feel honored to be the principal of this campus at this time in the context of the acceptance of this enormous project, 19.2 million Canadian dollars, effectively the largest single project in terms of budgetary input that this campus has undertaken. It's a significant development, it's a major financial investment, and we are very appreciative. So to all, Ambassador Henley, we thank you. To our colleagues in your mission in the Government of Canada, to my colleagues here at Cave Hill, we wish you all the very best, and we thank you for ensuring that the University of the West Indies is well positioned to do the work required of it. Have a very good evening, everyone, and God bless.
And now, having heard his name said so many times this evening by by the Professor, it's only right that I should now call on His Excellency Richard Hanley, the High Commissioner for Canada to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, to address you. He was appointed by the Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird on the 15th of October 2012 and succeeded Ruth Archibald in this posting. His previous diplomatic postings included Moscow, Bogota, Colombia, and the Permanent Mission of Canada to the United Nations in New York. As the major funder of Impact Justice, we're pleased to have the Canadian government's top representative with us this evening.
With protocol well established by the Master of Ceremonies, I wish to extend greetings to you this evening on behalf of the Government of Canada, and thank you for joining us on this occasion. It is indeed an honor to be here tonight at this distinguished university. 2 weeks ago, at the Summit of the Americas held in Panama, Canada's Prime Minister Stephen Harper confirmed Canada's continued support to justice reform in the Caribbean with the official announcement of a $40 million Canadian programming for the sector. The two projects announced are the Judicial Reform and Institutional Strengthening in the Caribbean project and the Improved Access to Justice in the Caribbean project, both aptly known as Jurist and Impact Justice, respectively. The Jurist project, delivered through the Caribbean Court of Justice, seeks to modernize and strengthen the Caribbean court systems by re-engineering processes and building the capacity of judicial officers to deliver timely, transparent, and effective justice. The Impact Justice Project, implemented by the University of West Indies Cave Hill campus through its Caribbean Law Institute Center, is aimed at ensuring better access to justice for vulnerable and marginalized communities in the region, as well as by governments, the private sector, and civil society as a whole. Canada's programming to strengthen the rule of law fulfills part of its $600 million Canadian commitment of development assistance through the Caribbean Regional Program. The aim of the program is a more prosperous and integrated Caribbean community able to generate sustainable economic growth, providing opportunity and security to its citizens. The program focuses on supporting effective and accountable public institutions, strengthening the management of public finances and debt towards a stable fiscal environment, increasing the productivity of small and medium-sized firms for regional and global markets, enhancing access to skills for both employment and entrepreneurship to prepare youth to succeed in the global economy, mitigating and responding to natural disasters, and of course, rule of law. Both the Jurist and Impact Justice projects will contribute to these broader program areas. So how did we get here? In 2012, Canada commissioned the Justice Sector Analysis to identify the gaps where Canadian assistance would be of most value to the region, and to assess the priorities for justice reform at national and regional levels. The findings were clear that the predominant view throughout CARICOM was that justice sector reform, in order to provide the overall effectiveness of the justice system, was needed as a priority for the region to improve access to justice and strengthen the administration of justice. During a follow-up regional justice stakeholder consultation to discuss the findings, two organizations were identified by the region to lead the initiatives: the Caribbean Court of Justice on strengthening administration of justice, specifically the courts, and the University of the West Indies to bring together partners to address improving access to justice. The University of West Indies Cave Hill, through the Caribbean Law Institute Center, supported by the faculties of law on other campuses, including the University of Guyana's Faculty of Law, Caribbean governments, and CARICOM and OECS secretariats, the legal fraternity across the region, and civil society actors came together with us to design this project. It is the Impact Justice Project that brings us together this evening as it launches into 5 years of work designed to improve legal frameworks to guarantee economic development and the rights of citizens through strengthened legislation and the making of treaty policy, improve legislation and treaty drafting skills, increase the pool of drafters available, as well as increase access by states to new or amended laws. It will also improve legal services for and legal education of the public, improve access to legislation and case law, and strengthen the accountability framework and skills of the legal profession. It will increase access to and strengthen alternatives for settlement of disputes using alternative dispute resolution, restorative justice, and community-based peace-building services, and increase, finally, the public's knowledge and awareness of the law. The launch of this project seems timely as we reflect on the growing number of what seem to be increasingly violent crimes, not only here in Barbados, but also across CARICOM member states. The challenges of increased transnational crime, organized crime, as well as the illegal trafficking of drugs, arms, and people impact all CARICOM communities. The impact of such crimes on economic and social development, as well as on the growing perception by the public that the justice system in countries is failing to ensure the security of the region, gives us all reason to pause and consider the critical need to support and ensure our resolve to reform the region's justice sector. Canada has worked alongside Caribbean governments and the donor community present in the region on justice reform initiatives for well over 2 decades. Canada's continued commitment to work in this area builds on our strong, long-standing relationship with the Caribbean, and which has not diminished over time. Justice sector reform is a priority for Canada. The University of the West Indies is a strong regional and willing partner through which Canada is delivering significant support to the region, not only for the justice sector, but also in education and disaster risk management. I'd like to say also that there are many governments and individuals here who should be commended tonight for their work in justice reform. And I note a few here who are with us in who are present tonight or appeared on the screen. And I acknowledge the work of Chief Justice of Barbados, Sir Marston Gibson, and certainly Attorney General Brathwaite of Barbados. And I salute them and other justice officials for their vision and perseverance in pushing forward the justice reform initiative. And there are many more who could be recognized in Barbados and the CARICOM region tonight for their excellent work, and I salute them. I also thank Professor Sir Hilary Beckles tonight for his kind words about Canada and on our partnership. He's been a good friend to Canada and the Canadian High Commission. I also will take the opportunity that he recently received an honorary doctorate from Brock University in Canada late last year, a tribute certainly to his significant contributions and accomplishments, which are well recognized beyond the Caribbean. Finally, I congratulate the university itself, the Faculty of Law, led by Dr. Berry, and especially Professor Newton, on a job well done in moving this work forward. I'd like to thank some of my colleagues at the High Commission, Dr. Gail Miller, the Senior Director for the Caribbean Regional Development Program, who's here with us tonight, and Michelle Gibson, the officer responsible for this file in the High Commission. They've done wonderful work in putting this forward. And I want to thank everyone here today for putting aside busy schedules to celebrate the formal launch of Impact Justice and the future successful implementation of the project, which will bring great results for the region. On behalf of the Government of Canada and from all your friends in Canada, I wish you great success. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The next person to appear here is Professor Velma Newton, who is the Regional Project Director for Impact Justice. She's a Barbados scholar, a former senator, and she has served as the Dean of the Faculty of Law and also been officer in charge of the Caribbean Law Institute. In this post, Professor Newton developed the proposal for Impact Justice and has served as the regional director since the agreement was reached between the University of the West Indies and Canada's Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development. Who better to explain this project than Professor Velma Newton.
Good evening, everyone. The protocol lists having been established, I just would like to say how pleasing it is for me as the director of the Impact Project to see all of you here this evening. Now, you would have heard that the project started in 2014 when the agreement was signed between the representative of the Canadian government and Professor Sir Hilary Beckles. Since then, that is March 2014, and now, a year later, much of our time has been spent developing the project plan, which we will follow for the next 5 years. And we've almost completed that phase, and in between, we also completed what was the first year of that plan. And it was a very hectic schedule for us at the Impact Office, and I would like to pause now to thank the small group of staff who helped me, Tamisha Rochester, Henderson, my right hand, Amy, Nyla, and before them there was Karen, who's gone is working now in the bursary, and a few other persons who were part-time or were consultants. As Ambassador Henley would have said while he was speaking, it is an extremely ambitious and wide-ranging project, and he actually moved through the various components. So what I will do now is to just give you a pictorial overview of some of the things that we have been doing. As we said, it's a 5-year project. Its implementation started in 2014, March 2014, and it has as its ultimate outcome enhancing access to justice benefiting men, women, youth, and businesses in 13 CARICOM member states. But what that map is meant to show you, it's supposed to show you the regional reach of impact justice, starting from Suriname in South America to Belize in Central America. And in the 5 months, because effectively we started work in November 2014, in the 5 months since we have actually started to work, we have visited all of those countries, and we have either implemented some activities in those countries or have visited and have plans to do so. Here's His Excellency Richard Hanley and Sir Hilary Beckles, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles. They were the main speakers at our first meeting, which was held in May 2014. And that meeting was extremely important for us because it helped us to set the agenda for the next 5 years. We had present attorneys general, presidents of the bar associations, both regional and national, and chief parliamentary council and some others, who we sat together and decided how best we should move forward. And some excellent suggestions for reform came out of that meeting. And these were the 2 gentlemen. And here at the same meeting, His Excellency Sir Richard, Sir Hilary, Dr. Berry, and myself. And these were some of the participants. I think at this stage, the members of the Bar Association had been closeted in another room because they were looking at matters pertaining to the legal profession. So the others that you saw in that picture were attorneys general and chief parliamentary council and some other staff. And then the next meeting we had was on October 15th when we had our first project steering committee meeting. And as you see, there am I at the left, and Mr. Mark Mostovac from the Canadian High Commission, and Godet also from the Canadian High Commission, Sir Dennis Byron, the president of the CCJ and the project leader of the Jewish project, which, as His Excellency Hanley told you, is a sister or brother project to Impact Justice. And there's our deputy principal. And at the same meeting, here are these 2 attorneys general and the chief justice enjoying themselves. Sir Marston, Honorable Judith Jones Morgan from St. Vincent, and our own Attorney General of Barbados. And that's another view of the Project Steering Committee meeting. And then we moved to I think it was a week after the Project Steering Committee meeting, we had our first activity under, this is a component one, which deals with legislative drafting and teaching of training of drafters and drafting of legislation. And this was a meeting at which we trained mainly permanent secretaries from across the region in how to draft instructions for drafters. Because at the May meeting, that was one of the weaknesses that was identified. And we decided then and there that our first, or as close to possible as the first meeting, would be to teach these permanent secretaries and senior officers how to draft proper instructions. And then a couple of days later, we actually provided assistance to train some senior members of government to how to do arbitration. And we have 3 persons there. There's Donna Brathwaite QC, who's the Deputy Solicitor General. She's at the left, or right? She's at the right. And then there's Beverly Gadsby, and I can't remember the name of the other attorney, but there are these 3 attorneys and 2 others who did an associateship of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and they were all successful. We heard just a few days ago. And then we moved to another meeting to do with drafting, because drafting legislation is so critical for what we do and for the reform initiative in the Caribbean. And most of the countries in the Caribbean, with the exception of Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad, some have 1 or 2 drafters. And they have to rely on outside assistance, or laws just get put on the shelf until they can get to them. So here, what we're trying to do to obtain buy-in from Chief Parliamentary Council, and also is some self-interest, to get them into the habit of working together so that when we provide draft legislation, they will all be singing on the same page, to have the same drafting styles and so on. We hosted this workshop on the December 11th, 12th, we decided to start on our Alternative Dispute Resolution Foundation program. And here's Mr. Justice Francis Bell of the OECS Supreme Court. He lectured on mediation, the mediation imperative and problem solving through community mediation. He gave 2 lectures, one night and the other night. And here are some of us at question time, myself, Professor Ventos, who's with us, and Justice Bell. And I have to tell you something about that meeting. The second of those 2 meetings for, at which we discussed mediation, there was a 16-year-old girl, student from Lord School, who came to the meeting, and she came up to me and she said, "Ma'am, I would like to be a mediator." And I said, "Well, yes, in time." She said, "No, not too long from now." And you will see why I'm telling you this a little later on. After Justice Bell's introductory lectures, we moved to an introductory workshop for staff of the Supreme Court of Barbados. Yes, there's a Chief Justice smiling away at the corner, and I'm at the left. And these were the staff who were sensitized as to the meaning of mediation and how it would proceed. And that was at the end of the year. And this is another shot of that. And the next week, January 5th and 6th, we moved on to training carry law indexers. I'll have to tell you a little about carry law. Carry law is currently the foremost tool, online tool, for gaining access to cases decided in the Caribbean region. It is a faculty of law project. I spent more years of my life than I would like to tell you working on carry law cases and getting it up and running. And I'm proud today to say that Carrie-Law has nearly 50,000 cases on the website. It is heavily used by faculty, persons like Eddie Ventos, who used it extensively to prepare for books that he's been publishing. And I know others, Dr. David Berry and others, have been using it as well. But we were not getting cases on Carrie-Law as fast as we would like. And we also wanted to upgrade the interface. So when the Impact project came along, it was an excellent opportunity for us to serve the region better by providing greater access to legal materials, both for attorneys at law and other people who might be interested in legal materials. The judiciary, students, the ordinary man in the street sometimes wants to see, before he brings a case, what the likely outcome could be, because you know there's some of them who would like to do their own thing. And so this was a workshop to train persons who were going to prepare head notes for the cases, because each case on that website has a head note explaining in brief what the facts are and what the holdings of the case are. And we did not have enough people doing that. There was a time when I did it on my own. But we're getting more cases and so on now, so we had to have some training, and we trained 5 young attorneys, and they've been working since January on cases. I think they've done about 500 or so so far, and that project is moving well. And while we're doing that, we're premature. While we're doing that, we're also working with And or Not, a company in British Columbia that is working to improve the interface. So we have really a two-prong attack on the project to improve Carrie-Law. There the index is working, 3-prong really. We have additional people, all funded by Impact Justice, who are editing cases at a rapid rate, more rapid than we've ever been able to do. And we have the technicians in British Columbia, where the backup to Carrie-Law is actually being hosted for the past 2 or 3 years. They're making improvements for access and speedier access, sorry, use the word again, to the cases. And now in February, a couple of weeks after the Carrie-Law training, we moved to Jamaica, and we had a meeting of bar associations. This is presidents of bar associations and regional, and presidents of the regional bar associations, which are OCBA, the Organization of Commonwealth Caribbean Bar Associations, and the OECS Bar Association. And we have with us here tonight the president of the Barbados Bar Association, and his deputy. They were very much there. And what we did was we looked at some suggestions that had been made in that important May meeting, which would affect the legal profession. And we focused on codes of ethics, disciplinary procedures, and you know that is a thorny subject. And we looked at accounting procedures for lawyers, because again, sometimes that can cause problems. And what came out of that meeting was the fact that the legal profession in the region is well aware of any shortcomings that affect it and are willing to do something about it. And the other thing that we discussed extensively was continuing legal profession, continuing legal education for the profession. Because lawyers do not, except in Jamaica, have to go back to school to upgrade their skills. And this is something that the Impact Justice feels very strongly about, and we would want to see it happening on a region-wide basis. And I have to report that at that meeting, those present agreed that it was a good thing, and Jamaica is the foremost in that regard, with regard to continuing legal education in the region, and they agreed that they would follow the Jamaica model. And just last week, the project implementation unit, the Impact Office, we were able to send the reports of that meeting off to a drafter who is going to put the recommendations in draft form, and then we will look at them again have our discussions, and at that point we will involve attorneys general and chief parliamentary counsel, and we'll take it from there. But they're all of the bar associations in the region are committed to continuing legal education for lawyers. And I mentioned carry law and the work that was being done to upgrade the interface by our partner and or not in British Columbia. And this is a representative who came down to have discussions with us in February. And there was Dr. Berry seeming a bit perplexed about something. But it was a good discussion, and we were able to settle quite a few issues. Some are still unresolved, and we're working on them, but it was a good meeting. Along with the other things we're doing, we have been having discussions with DFID, and DFID has two representatives here tonight, Mr. Alex Ferguson, and a brand new legal drafter, criminal justice advisor, with whom we'll be working extensively. And the reason we'll be working extensively is that the financial intelligence units and the police and the Coast Guard and the controllers of customs, all of the actors involved in fighting crime in all its ugly heads would like to see legislative changes made. And at this particular meeting, we had, I think it was 54 representatives from across the region. And we discussed the issues. And at the end of the meeting, it was decided that we would seek a legal opinion as to how best to go forward, whether to amalgamate proceeds of crime legislation and anti-money laundering, or whether we should have separates, and what amendments we should make. And at that meeting also is when Impact Justice and DFID, represented by Mr. Ferguson, of whom I just spoke, agreed that we would move forward together because we're all fighting for the same things. And the gentleman to whom I'm speaking there, John Charles, a private drafter of legislation, he agreed to provide the legal opinion, which he has done, and it will be distributed next week. I've just told Mr. Ferguson he will get a copy, and then we will see how best we go forward. Yeah. This was and now we've come to mediation. This is April. We had done, as you would have seen, that we had some mediation initiatives in the end of December and early January. And now we've decided to move to community mediation, because it is our firm opinion that this is where we will be able to do a lot of good in assisting people to settle disputes, some of them minor disputes that do not have to go to court to clog up the court system. But what we will do to others, there's been a lot of training in the region in the past 10 years, but what we will do differently is that we will not train people and send them away, leave them there. What we will do is to work with government agencies and with the churches and schools to see if those persons who are trained, and of course have to abide by code, because we are going to have legislation to regulate them, can work in those centers to do their mediations. It will be a structured environment with trained persons in mediation techniques, but they will know how they can move forward. What happened in the past is that several people were trained, especially in the OECS, and that nothing more happened. And a few of them managed to get on the court rosters where they could exercise their skills. But some of the others have never had an opportunity. And it hasn't occurred to them to try to help themselves and, go and try to band together maybe 3 or 4 in rural communities and set up shop. So we now will help them to transition between that preliminary step of getting the training and putting it into place. And we trained 22 mediators at that workshop, and there's another one coming up in early June, at which we'll train another 22 persons. And the second workshop will focus on the persons who we believe will be most effective at the community level, and that is justices of the peace, probation officers, police, and well-known leaders in communities. And I'm not sure what we're going to do in 3 weeks' time, because we have a list of about 50 persons. And the justices of the peace are saying we should train them exclusively and then go to others, send in their certificates and letters and so on. But we want to take a few from each sector, and we'll see how it goes. But this group was extremely good and interested and engaged. And there is the trainer, Ms. Ann Diaz. She is from the Faculty of Social Sciences at Trinidad, UWI Trinidad, St. Augustine campus, sorry, getting my words mixed up, who is providing the certification. She's an extremely experienced mediator, and there was a good response to her. Let's have a few more pictures. And that is Mr. Kumar Hathmarani, and he's here tonight. He is the president of the ADR Association. And I wanted to show his picture because it is symbolic of how Impact Justice wants to operate in terms of mediation, and in terms of all of its projects, really. We want to partner with persons who are already there, groups that are already in the field, and strengthen them so that when this project goes, they or others that they would have trained will leave something behind. And therefore, in another week or so, we want to meet with the ADR Association, which Mr. Hafmarani heads, and the newly trained mediators, so that we can come up with a plan for going forward. Next one. That was the Attorney General at the opening of that mediation workshop, in which he expressed his pleasure that it was starting and so on. And this is the 16-year-old young lady I spoke about earlier. When she saw the ad in the newspaper for mediators, she called me and she said, "And you remember me?" I said, the name, I didn't remember the name. She said, "I told you I want to be a mediator." You remember me? And then I remembered. She's only 16. She was the youngest in the group. The others are their 20s and 30s. But she came and she held her own. We noticed that from day 2. Well, she came in her jeans and so on first day. Second day, she was dressed, heels and so on. She was trying to fit in with the others, but she held her own. She held her own, and we are extremely proud of her. Yes. Yeah, there are some more of the participants. And that group of mediators were policemen, attorneys, teachers. We had a few differently abled persons. It was a wide cross-section. And it was extremely gratifying to see what their reactions were and to hear from the coaches and the facilitator, Ms. Diaz, how they actually did in mediation. So that's as far as we reached. I just wanted you to see what we've been doing. I know this is a launch, but all of those activities were provided for in our annual work plan. The annual work plan being really a truncated one from November to March. But we were able, by planning carefully and working hard, and again I have to thank this Impact staff, to execute activities from within each area of the work plan. And we are very pleased and gratified by that. Thank you all for listening.
Let me then give the opportunity to Dr. David Berry, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Law, to extend the vote of thanks. It's always a almost thankless job to say thank you, because the greatest fear always is that you may miss not saying thank you to somebody out there. But there's always a catch-all. So all is not necessarily lost. Dr. Berry, of course, has provided He's not just the dean of the law faculty, but he also has become very popular with the students as a lecturer in law. Outside of the campus, he's provided international legal advice to Caribbean governments and regional organizations. He's been particularly active in serving on a number of legal teams for Barbados, its arbitration with Trinidad and Tobago, those maritime boundaries as to where the flying fish are, whether they're in our waters or Tobago's waters for that matter. And I've had to bear the brunt of Trini's, where I worked for some time, asking me, why am I stealing their flying fish? So your work is very highly respected, sir. But of course, he's made a number of appearances in front of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights as well, and the flying fish were not involved there. So Dr. Berry, I want to invite you up. This has got to be an easier task than defending the territorial and maritime boundaries. Please join us.
Thank you. I'd be grateful if you'd allow me to accept the protocol as having been established. Good evening, all. I am pleased to be able to offer thanks to the persons and organizations who made tonight's ceremony possible. Mr. Julian Rogers, the MC for tonight's function, thank you for keeping this ceremony ordered, elegant, and entertaining. And the answer is, if you catch the flying fish, as long as you're in your own waters at the time, they're your flying fish. His Excellency, Mr. Richard Hanley, for his personal support for the project and for his presentation, which provided an overview of its scope and importance. The principal for taking his time to record his welcome and remarks, even though he could not be present with us here tonight. Professor Velma Newton, for her tremendous work in conceptualizing and drafting the project proposal and redrafting and redrafting and redrafting, and for following it through to today's launch. As you would have seen from tonight's presentation, the wide range of activities already undertaken shows that this is really a launch in name only. It is well underway. I also thank her in advance for her timely, as we know what will be her timely and effective implementation of the project. Mr. Anthony Ross, we thank for his stimulating presentation, highlighting the different roles of law in economic development in its very, very widest and broadest sense. I also enjoyed the historical anecdotes, so I think we should give you an honorary doctorate in history from UWI. Let me turn to the Cave Hill team. I must thank Jennifer Hinkson, Assistant Registrar, Events Planning and Administration, who had overall responsibility for campus preparations for tonight's event. Ms. Judy Millington, Campus Venue Coordinator, who ensured that the venue was available and made arrangements for security and parking. Ms. Patricia Atherley, Mr. Marlon Woodruff, Mr. Mark Headley, and Mr. Brian Elcock of the Cave Hill Education Media Services for providing equipment, designing the programs, and taking photographs. The technical team responsible for ensuring that tonight's proceedings have been recorded and will be distributed throughout the region and beyond, including Media Rogers AG Inc., responsible for putting together the team, Merville Lynch Productions for filming and editing the proceedings, Caribbean Media Corporations, who will distribute the edited proceedings on Caribvision and other stations in the region, and in the Canadian provinces of Ontario and Quebec and elsewhere. SFA Communications, direction of videographer and photographer, and for preparation of press kit and other services. Representatives of the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation and the local press, we thank you for coming out to give us coverage in Barbados. For the elegant floral arrangements, Gmar Florists, Corbin's Caterers, whose delicious fare you will soon sample, and for all of those who I have not mentioned, I invoke Julian Rogers' catch-all at this moment. And finally, we thank all of you in the audience who've come out to join us in this special celebration tonight. Please stay for a while, enjoy each other's company and the refreshments which have been provided for you. And on behalf of the Faculty of Law and the University of West Indies, I thank you for coming tonight. Thank you.